since this is like a get to know you opportunity, what I thought I'd do is talk for a few minutes, give you my life story, my biography, and then we can do just some Q&A on any issue you want, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Okay. So first off, I'd start with a confession. I grew up in California. So I'm originally from California. I grew up in a town called La Cañada, which is a suburb of Los Angeles, up by Pasadena, Glendale area, up in the foothills. We lived there because they had good public schools. So I went to the public schools there, and when I graduated from high school, my mom, who was a single mom, left because she didn't need to be there anymore, and it's kind of an expensive community. Graduated from high school, went to college in Western Massachusetts at Williams College. Wasn't really prepared for the winters there, having lived in Southern California all my life. After college, went straight to law school. Really wanted to go back to California for law school. Ended up getting into the University of Michigan.
More cold winters.
So clearly Michigan is worse than Western Massachusetts. While I was at Michigan, they had a combined degree program. So in college, I majored in political science and environmental studies. At Michigan, while I was in law school, they had a combined degree program with the School of Natural Resources. So while I was getting my law degree, I also got a Master's of Science in Natural Resources Policy. It's always been sort of my passion. Later in life, for reasons I can't fully explain, I got a business degree at the University of New Mexico. So I'm clearly overeducated. After law school, came to New Mexico, had a clerkship at the Court of Appeals, which was a good experience. I had worked here the summer before and gotten to know the judge. So I worked at a firm, at the time it was Campbell, Carr, Bird, and Sheridan Bird, something like that. It previously had been Campbell, Bingaman, and Black. So Campbell, the Jack Campbell,
Yes.
former governor, Bingaman, Jeff Bingaman. Yeah. This was before I was there, and Black was Bruce Black, who was the judge I worked for. So it was, it was a good firm. It was a good experience. While I was there, one of the guys at the firm called up Judge Black and said, "You should hire this guy." And so I had this clerkship lined up after law school. At the end of the clerkship, all the jobs that were available in Santa Fe were general civil litigation, like insurance defense. And I knew I didn't want to do that. So I went back to California for 4 years. I worked for a big firm. I did some city attorney work. I did some shopping center development work. So that, like, the guy with the natural resources degree really didn't want to do shopping center development work. But if you've been to Orange County, California, you kind of understand why that was a good niche to be in. And it was good training, and it was good pay. And I told my friends I'd be back in New Mexico in 3 to 5 years, and it took me 4. So I came back. I worked for a small firm. I worked for the state engineer's office for a little while. I worked for a couple of nonprofits. And at one point, I was working for a nonprofit land trust. Despised my boss. She was a horrible person. And, I'd switch jobs before, and usually you line up a new job before you make that decision. And I couldn't take it another day, and I quit. And when you don't have a job, but you do have a law degree, what you do is you start doing some projects and practicing law. And that's how I became a sole practitioner. And that's why I am today. So I have my own little business. I work with another attorney, but we have separate practices. My practice is what I call transactional, meaning I mostly write contracts. So I don't do litigation. I don't sue people. It's not my expertise. My specialty is conservation easements. There are 4 New Mexico-based land trusts. I represent 3 of them. That's not enough work to keep me busy full-time. So, I do business formations and leases and stuff like that. I was a late starter when it comes to family. I actually just celebrated my 9th wedding anniversary, and I have 2 kids who are 5 and 8. So, I've been married for 9 years. I have an 8-year-old because I was in my mid-40s when I got married, and my wife was in her late 30s. We didn't have a lot of time to sort of think about that. It was either now or never. And I also just had a birthday. So I'm a 55-year-old with a 5-year-old at home. So I've got a long road ahead of me when it comes to kids. I first ran for office, I guess, in 2013. What happened was that in the redistricting, not the most recent redistricting, but the prior redistricting happened, and District 50, which I lived in, changed. And they added El Dorado to District 50. And my state representative, who at the time was Rhonda King, announced she wasn't going to run. And I called up a friend of mine, Leanne Leith. You might know Leanne. She was, at the time, a lobbyist for conservation voters. And I worked with her on a couple projects. And I called up Leanne and I said, Leanne, who's going to run? Because I was curious. I was active enough. I was on boards and committees and the water system and all this stuff. And I wanted to know who the state rep was going to be. And she said, you should run. And I said, no, I just want to know who's this guy. And she said, you should run. And I thought about it, and it occurred to me like I had the skills to do that. I could do that. I never campaigned or anything like that, and I wasn't active. I was active in the community. I wasn't active in the party. Right? I wasn't doing political stuff. I was doing conservation stuff. But I thought about it, and I thought, yeah, I could do that. And I sort of started getting interested in it. And then I looked at the calendar, and it was going to be an open seat. It was going to be a contested primary. In the last 2 weeks of the primary, I was going to be out of the country. And it was a scheduled trip. People talk about a trip of a lifetime. Okay, this was Galapagos and Machu Picchu with my 78-year-old dad.
Oh,
right? So it's already scheduled, I'm not going to miss that. So I didn't run. And this guy named Stephen Easley, he ran and he won.
Oh my God.
I got to know Stephen. Did you know Stephen?
I worked with him.
So
Alamogordo, right?
Originally, yes.
Yes.
But then retired, was living in El Dorado.
Yeah.
So exactly.
I worked with him at DOIT.
Right. So
Well,
so he
before it
was
was
sort of
DOIT.
a nerdy, techie guy, nice guy. I got to know him.
Apes also,
Apes.
and the Amazon. He and his wife. I mean,
Okay.
he started.
When he was in the legislature, he very strongly pushed telemedicine, which is an important thing that we have today. He got elected.
He was a deputy CIO under.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Under, she was at PNM. Oh, come on. Irish name. Moira Garrity. Under Moira Garrity. He was
So
the deputy
Stephen got elected.
under Richardson.
I had sort of developed an interest in it. And my thought was Stephen was going to serve for 6, 8, 10 years. And I was going to tell him, when you're ready to retire, let me know. Give me a heads up. And he passed away after a year.
He died.
So he had a variety of health issues. He went to the hospital. He never came back. Governor appointed a Republican. And at that time, I'd have to look at the dates, but I think I just got married. Maybe my wife was already pregnant. It's like that wasn't really the good time to run. And I thought about it, and I just sort of decided that I tried to control things in my life, and I didn't have control over that, and I just had to, if I wanted to do it, I needed to do it. So I ran against a Republican. She ran a very tough race. That was the year the Democrats lost control of the House. So it was a bad year. We lost a lot of seats. This was one of the only seats we picked up. And that was my first race. Now I'm my 5th. I am unopposed, which you can't imagine how good that is. And it's not a couple of people said, well, a healthy democracy would be voted. And it's like, I just want to do the work. I don't want to do the fundraising. I don't want to do the knocking on doors. Because I don't have to do all that stuff, I'm working on legislation. I have more time to do that. So that's a good thing. As I said, got married later in life, live in Galisteo, have little kids. They're in public schools up in Santa Fe, and I'm ready for election. Let me talk a little, before we do Q&A, let me talk a little bit about the district. So this is the old map, and this is the new map, and they're not the same scale, which I didn't realize, which I apologize for. But the key line to look at is this line right here. That is the bottom of Santa Fe County. That is this line. So all of this in the district got taken out of the district. I kept 40% of my constituents. So all the House districts represent about 30,000 people. I have about 40% of my former constituents. So I picked up the rest of southern Santa Fe County, this area out here, the rest of Edgewood, this area up here, which includes Cerritos and Madrid, which is a good fit for me because I live in Galisteo. So that's here. And then the new area is Placitas. And so, this is like, I don't have an opponent, which is great. I do have this new challenge of representing a new area and getting to know new people. I got a call today from a reporter from the New Mexican, I think it was from the New Mexican, asking about wild horses. And he said, so.
Must have been from the signpost, not the New Mexico.
It was Robert Knott. It was either the New Mexican
But it
or
wasn't
the journal, yeah. It was not the signpost. And he said, oh, so Brenda McKenna is working with you on that. Is that right? And I said, no, I'm working with her on that. Like, she's the one taking the lead on that. So that's sort of one of the new challenges that I know comes with this district.
So,
Questions?
so there's the issue that I've been recently made aware of about the VLM wanting to create a highway that would go through the wildlife corridor. Are you aware of what's
So I'm
happening?
aware of this because I got an email about it. I forwarded the email to Brenda and Kathy. Kathy had a prepared statement on that. It was apparently something that was in, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was in a report a few years ago and it never went anywhere and she doesn't expect it to go.
So the report, the initial report with projections and studies was done in 2001. The projections are incorrect because it only went out, I think, 15 years. And so at this point, 20 years later, over 20 years later, the study wouldn't be statistically relevant. But my understanding is that there's an issue with mining in terms of the buffalo tract agreement. I don't remember what the last word is. And so people who have been speaking with me about this are concerned that this is getting pushed at this point. Evidently, there are two pueblos involved. One pueblo said sure, and the other pueblo wants nothing to do with it. Santa Ana is the one that said no to wanting to do this, but there's a speculation and hypothesis, and emotions are running wild, and so I'm just wondering if you know what's going on, so that we have some facts straight.
So Placitas is a little tricky because you've got the one way in, one way out.
Yeah.
So there's a planning and emergency management reason to build a road. But that being said, from what little I know about this proposal, it's not going to happen. I think Commissioner Brooke is firmly against it. I think the congressional delegation wouldn't support it. I sort of got a little quick introduction to it, and it didn't seem like it was a concern.
It's being brought up again, but
Who's bringing it up?
it's being brought up on Nextdoor, which I'm not going to say anything.
No.
Yeah, just going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's always, it initially starts with the wild horses. I don't know the history in Placitas of the pro-wild horses. We don't want horses. And Nextdoor is not where I choose to get my
So
factual
if you send me an email, I can forward Commissioner Brooks' statement to you.
Okay,
I mean, she's dealt with this issue clearly and had this prepared,
okay.
and it seemed to resolve it in my mind.
All right, so it's not happening.
That's my understanding.
That's terrific.
Yeah, just as a little addition on that, which George did, but I think he talked a little bit about the mining as well, but yeah, it goes back like 20 years. There was proposals that they were going to do roads coming off of I-25 going east and west to connect with I-40,
Right.
which were just, these pipe trees or whatever, they're going to do. Because first of all, there's not that much congestion that you
Yeah,
would
I would
need
have.
those roads to do it. I mean, you know, you can drive through I mean, I drove in Anthony's through Albuquerque at rush hour, and believe me, for the most part, it's not that big a deal there. To go, well, going west, Santa Ana said, yeah, not happening ever. And also, as you're right, Santa Ana wanted to actually purchase the BLM land and keep it as a wildlife corridor. But to run a road through there, you've got to go through private land, BLM land, and I don't even know how you get all the way over to 14 and then what you would do down there. So it's a project that would cost $1 trillion. That's
Well,
never
and
going
there's
to happen.
connectors, in my understanding, what I've read, air quotes, right, is that initially this was being pushed by people who had moved into like the Diamond Trail. Okay, so, you know, people I've met who live there are phenomenal and very much proponents of keeping Placitas as it is. So, when I read, I don't believe until I speak with someone who actually.
Yeah, I mean, that again, it might be somewhere on a map or a plan or someone's proposal, but, you know, as the representative said, it's never gonna happen. And what we have done, on the Buffalo track, and Eska's done a lot of work, as well as Las Placitas Association, is we've got legislation pending in Congress. I forget, you know, the exact status, right, George? I mean, it's being pushed by the entire congressional delegation. Plus, the head of the BLM is our former congresswoman, who is intimately familiar, Deb Holland, with the BLM, with the Buffalo track situation. So, you know, nothing's going to happen in terms of any additional mining in Buffalo track. And if we ever get the legislation through, which it would prohibit any mineral extraction in the Buffalo track and the 2 other BLM areas that we have in the Placitas area.
That's the concern, is that if the mining, that becomes undoable, not doable with Buffalo track, then that would give those allegedly are proponents of the highway, basically the ability to create, this highway.
I think there are very few proponents of it. I mean, and you've got, you know, really vigorous opposition from Santa Ana. You know, Santa Ana likes to keep that as as part of theirs and as a wildlife corridor. So, you know, you can't say nothing is ever going to happen, but the chances of anything happening are very, very remote. And I think, you know, keeping the mining out of there is going to be another good thing.
Is it feasible to take the wildlife corridor and have it become essentially like a preserve through the federal government?
It could. It could. So, you know, it's one step at a time.
Yes.
So, do you have anything to add on the mining and legislation, George?
The letter's gone forward to BLM for administrative review, for administrative withdrawal. And it just has to get into the Federal Register, and then it's protected initially for 2 years. And then when the Interior Secretary signs it, she can sign it for 10 or 20 years. But in dealing with the BLM, that's the direction they wanted to go, and they were ready to handle it, and as far as we know, it's moving forward pretty quickly.
And that administrative withdrawal would protect it until the legislation goes through. So it's a stopgap measure.
Okay, well, those are, they would have to do a new study, because the projections in the over 20-year-old one are.
Oh, yeah,
completely
do it
incorrect.
sort of, yeah, that's not,
On the
that's.
roads, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't worry, don't lose sleep with that one.
Yeah, I know, I've seen that as well, and I think it's people just trying to create an issue that doesn't really exist there, so.
And there's a lot of drama that played out.
Oh, yeah.
Just kind of watching go. Wow.
George, did you have a question?
Well, I wanted to go on to the abortion issue in the state, what the governor's doing, and is that really a secure thing, or is that something that if she loses the race, Republicans can come in and throw all that stuff out, and we have to fight that?
So the governor issued an executive order, and which I have not read, I've seen some reports about it. It's an executive order. So day one, Governor Ron Kennedy rescinds that order, right?
Oh.
Because
Very good thought.
it's yeah, I mean, if that were to happen, but it's an executive order, so easily canceled. the legislature repealed our, I think it was 1950s era abortion law, which criminalized abortion for both the woman and the doctor, because we were concerned this was going to happen. I'm still kind of shocked that it happened and happened so quickly. So I feel very good that we repealed that. So we don't have any restrictions on abortion. We don't have any explicit protections. I've talked to the reproductive rights advocates. They've got attorneys looking at whether or not it's covered under, I believe, our civil rights, not the civil rights bill, the civil rights bill. So we have certain protections, and does that already include a right to privacy beyond what used to be found in the federal Constitution? They think it does. So I don't expect to see a bill that protects abortions, because anything we pass by the legislature and signed by the governor can be undone as well, unless you want the constitutional amendment route. What I think there's probably going to be more interest in is some states have passed legislation that make it more difficult for other states to reach into our state going after women seeking medical care. You know, that we won't extradite them. We won't provide personal information. We won't cooperate in aggressive actions by other states. So which is already happening and will happen at a greatly accelerated rate. If women come to New Mexico for an abortion, once they're in New Mexico, they won't be harassed.
That's what I understood the governor's executive order was protecting, is those people coming here for abortions,
Similar
not
to the
to
one
be
in
reached.
Massachusetts.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, the governor has been able to do that through executive order. I
But it
can
can be
see
severe.
legislation on something like that.
But not protecting, because we are unprotected at this point, at least in
But
other
we're not
things we've
restricted.
seen. No, that's correct, but we're not
Yeah.
protected.
So, I mean, the only way that you can enshrine it in the law, and it's generally much harder to pass something than to block something. So, like, if it did get passed, that would be a fight, by the way. But if it did get passed, then it would have some protection. If we put it to the voters, then you could have more protection, but then you have some definitional challenges. Like, do you call it a right to an abortion? Do you call it a right to privacy? If it is a right to an abortion, is there any discussion about like the trimesters or anything like that? And you know, we are a state that has late-term abortions. I believe that those abortions are really severe cases. There are cases where the fetus isn't going to survive or the mother's not going to survive. But there is a center in New Mexico that performs those.